books after I've read them based on some important things like mystery or something that creates curiosity. I want it to be a page turner. Another important factor is humor. And then I also look at vocabulary, word count, page count, all of that kind of stuff. And of course, I take in some information about the different ratings that the school systems have for the books as far as reading level and the publisher's reading level. I use air quotes here because those rating levels are based on many different factors and not one of them the same. Not one of them is scientific, uh, like provable, like there's this one way. No. So I take in all that information and then based on my experience with kids and my book clubs, I pick from there. So far, we've been pretty lucky and picked some really great books. Now, I always fill up a notebook with my selections. My memory isn't what it used to be. No, just kidding. Actually, maybe not. But it's because there's so many books and I want to keep all the information and not forget. Now, one of the important factors there is just because this book by this writer was great doesn't mean that their next book by this same writer is just as great because writers, like artists, kind of write in their moment, their seasons. So you will see some of their own things they're working through their books. And that is one of the great things about writing a book and reading a book is going through and learning about yourself and evolving and adapting and seeing new points of view and perspectives, just like a painter can paint something really tragic and horrible, and then another time paint something absolutely beautiful and makes your heart just skip a beat. Same thing with books. So I take notes because I can't guarantee that I'm always forever going to love this author. There are some old-timey authors that I love everything they write, but it's not even in the old-timey ones. In new authors definitely write for publishers, and publishers have an idea of what the market wants. And again, this is why they have reading levels that are just astronomical in what they think a child could read, should read. And again, there's a big, big thing there. So young adults used to mean that those were books designed for young adults. So that was for, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now that is a big span, and young adults goes down to meant for high school through college and their first job. It's a big span, very big span. And where you're at cognitively, emotionally, and comprehension wise, it's all over the place. But the same thing happens with children's books by saying this is great for 5 to 14 or 5 to 12 or 8 to 10 or 8 to 12. It's all over the place. So this is why I have a notebook full, or notebooks full of notes on books, because I have a different idea. And again, there is no science to saying, because every child is different, their environments are different, their brains are wired different, their experiences and perspectives on the world are different, and as they grow, those things change as well. So what one child can read on an emotional level, as well as a comprehension and a cognitive level, is different than what another child at the same age can handle. So there is a lot to pay attention to. It's not changed. This is something I used to think, that books have changed and we add agendas to books. It's always been there. I've been looking at a lot of books from the 17 and the 1800s recently, just trying to, open my horizons and see where things were like then. And I'm realizing the same thing. There are book collections of reviews on books, just like there are now from back then, and getting opinions about those books then has been eye-opening as well. So what we're experiencing now, it hasn't changed. So there is no science to books as far as what is age appropriate, because age appropriate is different than emotionally appropriate, which is different than comprehensionally appropriate, comprehension wise, or cognitively appropriate. Those there's so many facets that go inside reading. So my book clubs are probably not like most book clubs because I put a lot of thought into it. And on top of that, then I think about the crafts because I want to bring the books to life. And if you're lucky and you're part of my Magic Treehouse book clubs, that goes even further. So we talk about uh, the theme of the book and how it relates to where we're living or what we're experiencing or anything or what we've discovered as we've learned about the Civil War. We talk about that in our video responses, and we also make food inspired by the story as well. So we have a whole different, like, the Magic Treehouse book clubs are another step up from my traditional book clubs, but they all have a ton of research involved in selecting. I just don't go, oh, that's a cute book, let's read that. Um, I think that's how I got inspired by hosting book clubs, was because I noticed that as my son got older, there were less and less book clubs for him. And I thought that was an important aspect of reading. So we missed out on that when he got older. We read the books, like we checked them out at the library and had two copies. He was reading this one, I was reading one, and we talked about these books over dinner 90% of the time. 90% of the books he read, I read too. This is really important, and now that's a whole nother video. But I was sad that these kids growing up after my son were missing out on book clubs. Some of the stores that hosted book clubs are closed, some bookstores. There were some cute toy stores that had book sections that are closed. So there was this gap that I wanted to fill because I love books, and as a dyslexic, loving books is kind of a rarity. So I wanted to make sure that I could fill that gap. So that's where I started, was figuring out book clubs. But then I was like, but there's so much more we can do with books, because they're not just to be read, they're to be used as inspiration. So how can I be inspired by books? And the first thing, because I love crafts, kids ask me what my hobby is all the time. And I'm like, well, I'm doing it right now because I love to craft. So that was the first step, was crafts. And then I was like, ooh, we could do food. We could, first it was food inspired by the locations that the books were happening in. So like we could explore Egyptian food, but then it got into but we could craft with our food and have fun and make cream cheese filled celery with little strips of mozzarella on top, and make little eyeballs out of something like a little piece of olive chopped up, and make mummies. So cute, so delicious. Great way to include health into reading without trying too hard, because, the books are filled with agendas anyways, which there's a video about agenda filled books. I'm not sure that it was written with an agenda, but because of today's culture, there's super agenda in that book. But it may not have been written with that in mind. So we can fill up and bring the books to life by being inspired by the food that we eat and the crafts that we make, and obviously the books that we read. And then I took it to the writing because, I'm a writer, so I had to bring it into the writing realm of things. And it just made books come to life and be more fun. So it's not just a book club, it's an inspiration club, but it's a well researched inspiration club. But again, remember, there's no science, it's just research. I've researched what I've experienced, and I'm not a scientist, though I have lots of data on it. So, yeah, not a book club book, but a book you should read. It's funny, and it's a child and their parents take on what books should be today. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but that's a great discussion point, along with many other things. But I also like fun, cute little books. Um, I haven't finished reading this series yet, so we will see. It is on the book club list, but it is not confirmed yet. So I'm going to check out that series. A confirmed book is a book series that has personification, which I absolutely love personification because it allows us to look past the obvious. Though these chickens do have a problem with that, or at least one of them does, because he just calls every bird a chicken, even though they're not chickens, because they're weird blue birds. I love books that include magic, but they don't have to be all inspired by Harry Potter or like Harry Potter. This one's very different. And I love books that include an opportunity to explore science. This is where my Magic Treehouse came from first. Not because it included science, it was history. And I love books that make you go, I want to know more. So this is my next best favorite next to Magic Treehouse books, because it's that I want to know more, because this is inspired by scientific technology currently in development and the scientists who are inventing it. So I think it's super cool that the characters are inspired by real people, and then we can go and see them speak about it and real technology currently in development and how it's going to, better the world in some way. Uh, I love it. And I love books that show lots of diversity, because I believe diversity is not in its sexuality, but in all of humanity. The way we look, the way we speak, the food we eat, all of that's so important, and it helps us relate to each other. And that's the other thing, is creating a small community that will fall in love with books. They may not love books in the beginning. Give me 8 weeks and I think we'll have a reader lover, a reading lover. I get tongue-tied. It's my dyslexia. It's my gift. But I love that we can create an environment of a safe place to talk about books, because it's not cool at school all the time to talk about books and how I read this book and it was so awesome, and I read this book and it was so awesome, and this book was awesome, and this book was great. It's a place to just be like undercover. These are different friends who you may or may not know in real life, who are reading the same book. They're having the same book experience as you, and then talking about how they get to relate to that. And then we build the crafts around it. In this one, we do special projects, and it's just so important to give them other communities besides the school community. Again, influence. You, as the parent, have influence, the first and ultimate influence over your child, and knowing that influence also comes from what they're reading. This is just as important influence as the screen time is. You these characters, they become connected with, they become related to, and when the characters are experimenting with new ideas and new ways to exist, then your child is like, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe I should think about that. Maybe I should be open-minded and try new food when I go to my friend's house for dinner. So that's the other important thing about book club, and knowing the books that are being selected for your children to read in a social environment, is that it has a positive influence. Hope this helps you understand my behind the scenes in what happens when I create a book, I'll do a little bit more about like the crafting ideas and how a project goes from beginning to end, because sometimes I find projects online that I like and I incorporate, and sometimes I invent projects that take an evolutionary process to become a project. And sometimes they're just successful first off without an evolution, which is really random, but it happens. So I will come back with some more videos about that. And if you like this video, please hit the like, share it with a friend, and of course, subscribe so you can see more.